Every self-help book tells you the same thing. Build your network. Put yourself out there. Show up. Be seen. The entire industry runs on one quiet assumption: that connection is always the answer, and that being alone is the problem waiting to be solved. But you already know something that most people spend decades trying to learn. You know how to be alone, not because you failed at people, not because something went wrong, because something in you has always known that silence is not empty. And nobody ever told you that was a strength. So when did you figure this out? Because it didn't start yesterday. Think about it. You were the kid who could spend hours by yourself and not once feel the need to announce it. The one who had thoughts running so deep that most conversations felt like they were barely skimming the surface. The teenager who didn't need a crowd to feel complete. The adult who, at a packed party, always found yourself near a window, not bored, but simply elsewhere. You were not broken. You were built differently. And here is what science is only now beginning to catch up to. Researchers at the University of Rochester studied what happens inside the brain when people voluntarily spend time alone. Not isolation, not loneliness, chosen solitude. What they found was not a brain in distress. What they found was a brain at work. The default mode network, the internal processing system of the brain, becomes highly active during quiet, undistracted alone time. It consolidates memories, processes emotions, connects ideas, and builds the mental models that allow you to understand your own life. In simple terms, when you are alone and at rest, your brain is not shutting down. It is running its most important programs. And here is the part nobody tells you. That network, it works best when no one is around. But why does it feel so natural for you when it feels so uncomfortable for others? For many people who genuinely thrive in solitude, the answer starts early. Psychologist Donald Winnicott wrote about what he called the capacity to be alone, and his insight was remarkable for its time. He said that the ability to be alone, truly comfortably alone, is one of the most important signs of emotional maturity. Not a sign of damage, not a symptom of avoidance, a sign of development, of a self that knows what it needs. Many people who prefer solitude develop this capacity early, often because they had rich inner lives that the world around them couldn't quite keep up with. They learned to trust themselves as company, not because they were abandoned, but because they discovered that their own mind was worth spending time in. But here's where it gets complicated, because not all solitude is the same, and this distinction matters more than most people realize. A 2023 study published in Scientific Reports found that people who choose to spend time alone, keyword choose, report significantly better emotional regulation and greater life satisfaction. The operative word is autonomous. Chosen. When solitude is forced on you, it becomes isolation. But when you step into it deliberately, something entirely different happens. The stress hormone cortisol drops. The nervous system settles. The mind, finally free from the constant processing of social information, exhales. Research from psychologist Tuiving Nguyen at Durham University confirmed it. Solitude acts as a genuine emotional deactivator. It dials down whatever you are carrying and returns you to baseline. And people who voluntarily seek it benefit most. So no, you are not avoiding life. You are regulating it. Here is something fascinating about the way your brain actually works. Research shows that people who are comfortable in solitude tend to have more highly developed internal worlds. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who spent decades studying states of deep creative engagement, found that people who could tolerate and enjoy being alone were consistently more likely to experience what he called flow, that state of total absorption where time disappears and your best thinking emerges. You know this state. It is why your clearest ideas arrive not in meetings, but in the shower. Not in crowds, but at 6 in the morning when the world is still quiet. Not in conversation, but in the space after it, when you finally have time to process what you actually think. That is not antisocial behavior. That is your brain doing precisely what it is designed to do. And yet society has a word for people like you. Several of them, actually. Introverted. Withdrawn, distant. Those words carry a judgment baked in. They assume something is missing. that you are a social creature who somehow failed to launch. But here is a different frame entirely. A recent study found that people who spend substantial time alone report better overall health and higher life satisfaction than those who rarely spend time alone. Not slightly better, substantially, and the research is clear on why. When social pressure is removed, people exist more authentically. They stop performing. They stop managing impressions. They stop calibrating every word for an audience. They become fully and without apology themselves. There is a word for that. It is not isolation. It is not withdrawal. The word is solitude. And there is a precise difference between solitude and loneliness that most people never learn. Loneliness is wanting connection and not having it. It is a hunger, an ache, a gap between where you are and where you wish you were. Solitude is something else entirely. Solitude is the conscious, deliberate choice to be with yourself. It is not the absence of others. It is the presence of something quieter and more essential, your own clarity. You are not sitting alone wishing someone would call. You are sitting with yourself and not needing them to. That is not the same thing. That is almost the opposite. And if you have spent any part of your life wondering whether something was wrong with you, whether you were too quiet, too internal, too content with your own company, I want you to hear this clearly. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not cold, you are not broken, you are not behind. You are someone who learned early what many people spend a lifetime searching for, that your own presence is enough, that silence is not punishment, that being alone is not the same as being lonely, that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with your own mind. And you have been tending that relationship quietly and without fanfare for longer than you probably realize. That is not a flaw. That is a foundation. Harvard's longest-running study on human happiness found that the quality of your inner life is one of the strongest predictors of long-term well-being. Not how many people you know, not how full your calendar is, the quality of your relationship with yourself. So if your weekends look quieter than most, if you leave parties early and feel relief, not regret, if your perfect day involves very few other people and a lot of open, unscheduled space, you are not doing it wrong. You are doing exactly what your mind has always known it needed. If this felt like something you have been waiting to hear, leave a comment below. I read every single one. Protect your quiet.